Graphite's been called the high-tech commodity of the future, and it's been designated a supply-critical mineral. It's used in electronics, lithium-ion batteries, fuel cells, and many other green technologies. While China is far and away the major producer of graphite, its production is declining. However, there are other countries and companies willing to pick up the slack. One of those companies is Canada's Northern Graphite. Their Bissett Creek project in eastern Ontario is a large flake deposit. I spoke with CEO Greg Bowes about the market opportunity for graphite and what that means for Bissett Creek. Here's our conversation. Northern Graphite was the first new graphite company, and most considered it to be the industry leader. Why is that the case?
Well, a couple of reasons, Janet. Firstly, we're the only graphite company that's completed a bankable feasibility study and received our major environmental permit. So we've been at this for a few years, and we have quite a head start on the industry. But it's more than that. We've spent the last 5 years educating the industry about graphite, and we try and take a very professional, very analytical, statesman-like approach to it. There's a lot of kind of hype in the industry which confuses investors, and we try to avoid all that.
Okay, so what is special about the Northern Graphite deposit at Bissett Creek?
Well, a couple things. The first is location. It's 15 kilometers from the Trans-Canada Highway between North Bay and Ottawa. So we have the best infrastructure of any new graphite project, which contributes to it having the lowest capital cost. In addition, it's the only true large flake deposit. Over 90% of our production will be large flake. Nobody else is at 50. So that means higher revenue. It also means that we have the highest operating, or will have the highest operating margin in the industry.
What's the significance of large flake?
Well, there are a lot of applications where you can only use large flake. It gives you a lot more flexibility in what you can do for it, and you get a much higher price for large flake.
Okay, so with a large flake deposit and the fact that graphite's now one of these critical minerals, there's a lot of graphite companies, I'm assuming, coming online, probably about 60 of them. Are you concerned at all about, once you get out there, what about oversupply?
No, not at all. There are over 60 graphite companies, as you say, but there are very few advanced stage projects that can be in production in the next 5 years. And those of us in the industry all know the challenges of bringing on a new deposit, whether it's regulatory, environmental, financial. So there's not going to be a flood of new graphite projects. I think if a couple get built in the next 5 years, that's about the best we're going to do.
Okay, what about the current state of graphite prices and the market? Up, down, where is it at?
Well, it's pretty much at the bottom. The Chinese economy has slowed down, and there's little growth in the West, which means many commodity prices are at the bottom. As a result of that, we've had mine closures in China, and other operations have suspended production. So that kind of limits further declines in the price, but like many commodities, we are sitting around waiting for an economic recovery, waiting for higher prices.
Okay, so when there is an economic recovery,
yes,
everybody's boat's going to rise, rather.
Yes.
Why would people consider graphite over any other commodity that's out there?
Well, that's a very good question, and there are two very important factors that graphite has that most other commodities do not have. One is a serious supply problem. China produces over 80% of the world's graphite. Its mines are getting older and deeper. It's consolidating and modernizing the industry. It does not want to sell cheap raw materials to the rest of the world. It wants to sell value-added manufactured products. So the outlook for production and exports from China is down. The second factor is that there are a number of new uses for graphite that are here now and are growing very rapidly. Lithium-ion batteries are one, consumer electronics are another. So the growth in demand from new uses and new applications is something that run-of-the-mill commodities like copper and nickel, for example, would not have.
Okay, so in the graphite market, there's something also called graphene.
Yes.
What's the difference here? What's the significance?
Well, a graphite flake, if you looked at it under a microscope, is essentially a deck of cards. Looks like a deck of cards. It's thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of layers. So if you take a flake and you split it apart or delaminate it down to the lowest common denominator, you end up with a one atom thick sheet that is very strong and very conductive, and that is graphene. So a graphite flake is actually many, many layers of graphene. And the two scientists that proved graphene actually exists won the Nobel Prize in 2010. So there's a lot of excitement around graphene and what you can do with a material that is 200 times stronger than steel, much better conductor than copper, transparent, flexible, very strong.
And how does that relate to what you have at Bissett Creek being a large flake deposit? Can you produce graphene?
Yes, pretty much anybody that has a graphite deposit can delaminate the flakes, if you will, and make graphene. But right now there is no commercial process for making graphene in large scale quantities. So that is a research and development challenge that is ongoing.
So given all the factors that you've told us about, why should people consider investing in Northern Graphite?
Well, I think from a macro perspective, there's a very good supply-demand dynamic out there. We're at the bottom in terms of prices, and I think things will turn around. And if you look at graphite projects, as I said earlier, we're the only ones with a bankable feasibility study, or a major permit, and a large flake deposit. And even more than that, we have the lowest capital cost and the highest operating margin of any new graphite project.
Okay, so where is Northern Graphite at right now?
Well, in theory, we could start building tomorrow, if not for the small matter of $100 million.
Oh, no
yes.
problem.
So, you know, that's a large number for you and I, but it's not a large number in terms of the mining industry in general. It's doable for a junior company. So pretty much all of our focus now is on the financial side, strategic partnerships, offtake agreements, that kind of thing.
Okay, so we'll keep in touch and we'll find out what's happening as the year rolls on.
I hope so.
Great, thanks, Greg.